Hey, it's Mike. Social Religion Dystopia, known versus belief. I'll do some reading out of Book of Enoch and then get back into Book of Luke. We're going to go to section 2, starting chapter 6. This is what a lot of people have heard of. And it came to pass that after the children of men had increased in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. Now, of course, comely means desirable, appealing to the eye. And the angels, the sons of the heavens, it didn't say the sons of God here, it says sons of the heavens, saw and lusted after them, and said one to another, Behold, we will choose for ourselves wives from among the children of men, and will beget for ourselves children. And Simjaza, who was their leader, said to them, I fear that perhaps ye will not be willing to do this deed, and I alone shall suffer for this great sin. Then all answered him and said, We all will swear an oath and bind ourselves mutually by a curse that we will not give up this plan, and will make this plan a deed, like a contract. Then they all swore together and bound themselves mutually by a curse, and together they were 200. And they descended on Ardis, which is the summit of Mount Hermon. They called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn on it and bound themselves mutually by a curse. Well, I don't know, I thought they were sworn in heaven and they came down. Okay. So this is the first contradiction. The rest of it is a even bigger contradiction. And these are the names of the leaders. Simjaza, who was their leader, Ra Kaibar Ra Miel, I'm going to try this, Ekabel, Tamael, Ramuel, Danal, Ezekiel, Sarah, Qgel, Jael, these names, Azael, and I did practice it, and it's still Armors. So this is an interesting name. Armors, like armies, Armors. Bet Riel, and Anai, I guess what would be Zekiah, Sam Ma VL, Sartel. Sorry about it, it's just slow, but I'm trying to do these pronunciations. Turel, Jamjeel, and Arzgel. So Arzgel. I don't know. And these are the leaders of the 200 angels, and the others all were with them. Chapter 7, Section 2 of Enoch. And they took upon unto themselves wives, each chose for himself one. And they began to go into them, and mix with them, and taught them charms and conjurations, and made them acquainted with the cuttings of roots and woods. Now this is interesting, because Jesus talks about angels and that they're not able to marry in heaven. If they came down here, is that all of a sudden they'll change their character, their continence, or their, what's the best way of saying this? From being an ethereal, spiritual being to also become a physical being. So that's the first question. The second question, then, because we can't just assume that what we're reading is accurate. It's dangerous to do so. The other question is then, if it's not the case, and that they are ethereal beings, then do they enter, because we do know that spiritual beings now, and there's still even unclean spirits that we know now, I know, and we know of, in which you can be possessed by these things. These things do not like dry places. They live in places where there is life and water, and this is the reason why there's so many of them living in trees. It's not my making it up. It's the reality of things. If you do any Bigfoot researching or any of the other cryptid research and do it out in the woods, go to the edge of the woods and start filming these things, you'll start and interacting with them. You realize real fast that there's some real issues of it being simply a flesh and blood creature. And then if they manifest like Patty in the Patterson film, which I believe strongly that there was some blood rites and rituals involved, which means sacrifices, human sacrifices, allowed the thing to manifest. And it would be interesting in places like the Ukraine right now if there's an increase of sightings of such beings and creatures, especially where there's dead people, and if they're being sacrificed and to cause these things to manifest. There's a lot of questions in that. So, what happened? What helped bring them down here in the first place? Anyways, and they took with themselves wives, and each chose for himself just one, remember? And they began to go into them, and we know that spirits can go into a person today and mix with them, and they can do that. And we know through endless accounts and the rites and rituals are happening today in our own day. People practice such things as Satanism, Luciferianism, human sacrifice, blood sacrifice, worshipping within the groves, etc. It's a real thing that happens. And people today, even to this day, women marry themselves to spirits. And many times thinking that they're marrying themselves to, like, maybe it's Lucifer or Satan, when in reality they're marrying themselves to something outside of God. That means there's a lot of spirits around us today. Even if there's other people to say you can't find it in the Bible, well, it doesn't matter if you can find it in the Bible. People are doing it and things are happening. Alright? And I'll come back to that. Because I'm a person believes in the Bible. I just don't. I understand it. For some reason, I understand it better than apparently the Pope and most other people. Anyways. But the thing is, so then witchcraft and sorcery is what we're starting to read about. And when Riskpor asked him sorcery, a lot of times witches, whether male or female, marry themselves to entities outside of Jesus. And many of those end up being the leaders of your nations and your countries and your corporations and your military and all sorts of things. So that's something to think about. But here it is interesting. It says, and made them acquainted with the cutting of roots. And this is something that, you know, when people practice voodoo and all the other variations of it, do, and of woods. Are we talking about idols, totems, that kind of thing? And they became pregnant and brought forth great giants, whose stature was 3,000 ells. Now, if we were to say that 3,000 ells was simply a centimeter, that would make them almost 100 feet. Millimeters would make them just under 10 feet. Being 10 feet would make you a giant in our day for sure. In their day. And these devoured all the acquisitions of men, till men were unable to sustain themselves, and the giants turned themselves against mankind in order to devour them. And they began to sin against the birds and beasts, and against creeping things, and of the fish, and devour their flesh among themselves, and drank the blood thereof. And then the earth complained of the unjust ones. Now what's interesting here is that in Genesis, in the beginning of Genesis, the food for men was the fruits of the trees. And after the flood, God made it okay for men to eat flesh. Let's not go back to what this is just read about, and not just conjecturing, but there is a connection, a possible connection, that men were so corrupt, in particular men, Noah's sons and daughters, maybe even, remember, Noah was the only just one God found. It wasn't his family, it was Noah. And after the flood, God said it was okay for them to eat flesh. But now this goes back to this whole thing prior to the flood, and the sinning of flesh and against beasts and birds and creeping things and fish. And if man was not meant to have eaten all these things, but to live in harmony with these things, with the nature and animals, whatever, prior to the flood, and then they start eating the very things. Because remember, it says not just the giants. And how did the giants, and then they turned themselves against mankind in order to devour them. And they began to sin against the birds and the beasts, and against creeping things and fish, and devour their flesh among themselves, and drank the blood thereof. Now, it's not saying, and they did some kind of experimentation on them and created hybrids, and it's saying specifically what it's saying. They started eating God's creation. Flesh and drinking blood. Which, drinking blood, and that in particular in our day, has something to do with a lot of occult practices, right? Then the earth complained of the unjust ones. Now I want to go back to this 3,000 L's, just to put it in perspective. If it was 100 feet, and think about what 100 feet is. If there were 10-foot men, that'd be 10 men stacked up 10 times. Okay, so the average person is 5 something, right? So it makes it 20 times the size of somebody today. Yeah, you would definitely call it to be like the Jack and the Beanstalk scenario, right? The giants. But if man didn't grow any more than average than it is today, right? A 10, 12-foot dude would seem like a giant. In fact, an 8-foot dude would seem like a giant. Anybody been around a 7-foot person and you're the average height like myself of 5'9", yeah, they look like and feel like they're in the presence of a giant. Now you add just 1 more foot, 2 more feet. I guarantee you something that looks like 8, 9 feet, you know darn well they're a giant. My point is, when it comes to the 3,000 L's, which is interesting because you could then put something in front of it, right? L's. And there's L, like God, L's, etc., etc. Whatever this L's is, let's make sure that we realize that it's not a very large measurement in man's stuff. Even if it was an inch, which 3,000 inches, good God, I mean, just imagine how big that thing would be. If it's 1 centimeter, and it's what? Almost 100 feet. If it was an inch, it'd be, what, getting cut to 400 feet. Now we're real. I mean, not only would we not be grasshoppers to something that's 400 feet, we would be ants. So we know one thing: this thing cannot be more than an inch, and it cannot even practically be more than a centimeter. And let's put this in perspective. We see L's. And people say, "Well, I don't know what exactly that measurement is." I don't either, but I know one thing: it's not practical. Even if this creation was perfect the way it was back then, to have beings that were all of a sudden, if an L was a foot and that was 3,000 feet tall, a mile tall, it just doesn't make it makes no sense. So, but what is certain is that these things started eating flesh and drinking blood. And we also know in our day that witches and warlocks, they marry themselves to unclean spirits and invite these things to indwell in them in order to get supposed supernatural power, which possibly could be, or simply to benefit. What profit the man if he gain the whole world but lose his own soul, type of thing, right? Now, Azazel taught mankind to make swords and knives and shields and coats of mail, like the Lord of the Rings, right? And taught them to see what was behind them. That's interesting to see what's behind them. And their works of art, and bracelets and ornaments, and to use rouge, which is red, to and the beautifying of the eyebrows. So I guess so. By nature, even women are supposed to have a lot of wild hair and wild eyebrows, right? And the dearest and great wickedness, and the dearest choices of stones and all coloring substances and the metals of the earth. So we talked about bracelets. So there's this to adorn oneself, to make oneself look more attractive through bracelets. And their works of art, being that of metal, knives, shields, swords, coats of mail. If it's real, it's starting to sound and smell awful like Eurasian type of stuff. And the beautifying of the eyes, and here's a use of rouge, red, ochre, and a lot of tribes throughout the world, whether in Africa or in Americas, just 100 years, 200 years ago, were used, and still some do today, ochre, red rouge to cover the whole bodies. And I believe there's even some in India and imagine other places where they cover their bodies in red. Even to this day. And why is that? Why would you do that? And why would you do that if you don't even know about this book and everything, Or is this book just a cheap rip-off of what once was known? And there was great wickedness and much fornication, and they sinned, and all their ways were corrupt. And fornication can mean more than having sex out of wedlock. I don't know if you realize that. But fornication also just the mixing, the polluting of, say, God's true religion with the things of men. Mixing, say, witchcraft and sorcery with the truth of God. This is a form of fornication. So there's much fornication, and they sinned, and all their ways were corrupt. And Mezerach taught all the conjurers and root cutters, and Armoros the loosening of conjurations. So there's one teaching conjurations, root cutting, and then there was one how to loosen the spells or bonds. What you bind on earth, which will be bound in heaven, and what you loosen on earth will be loosened in heaven. And Barakel, the astrologer, and Kokabel, the signs. And it's very dangerous to assume that we know what we're talking about here, about signs, or astrology for that matter. And it's not astrology per se, it didn't say that. And Tamel taught astrology. No, so Barakel, the astrologers, he taught the astrologers, and Kokabel, the signs, and Timel taught astrology. And Azradel taught the course of the moon. So we know that these four angels were specifically teaching stuff about the heavens, the stars, the moon, the sun, the course of them, etc., etc. Times and seasons, and etc., what might happen. And in the destruction of mankind, they cried aloud, and their voices reached heaven. And Michael and Gabriel and Sarjan, and Urjan, I believe that's how you pronounce it, looked down from heaven and saw the great amount of blood which had been spilled on the earth, and all the wickedness which had been committed over the earth. So it was a lot of bloodshed, murder, eating of the animals, eating of men. It sounds like, and also the killing of men, each other, going contrary to what in the beginning of what man was supposed to do, right? And they said to one another, the empty earth re-echoes the sounds of their man's cries up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, O ye holy ones of heaven, cry the souls of men, saying, secure us judgment before the Most High. As they spoke to the Lord and to the King, O Lord of lords, God of gods, and King of kings, the throne of thy majesty is among all the generations of the world, and thy name holy and glorious among all the generations of the world. Thou art blessed and praised. Thou hast made all things, and all power is with thee, and all things are open among thee and uncovered, and thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. Well, that sounds a lot of stuff what Jesus said, right? What is hidden on earth will be revealed, right? And or hidden in darkness will be brought into light. And that also, who's the King of Kings in the Bible, in the New Testament? And who's the God of gods? And who's the Lord of lords? If you start reading this book properly, you're going to start realizing there's a lot of contradictions. Either this book has to get thrown out, or the Bible has to, and that's the reason why they took it out. There's some really important things though in this book. If you can read between the lines, if you can read the tea leaves, and that is witchcraft and sorcery, which still happens today in 2022. Which human sacrifice is so prevalent and so outrageously prevalent, is right in front of our face. If you just pay attention to just what happened in the past 2 years, from the 2020 to now, and you can't recognize the giant worldwide sacrifice, blood sacrifice, and you can't see the sorcery and witchcraft and all this, I don't know what to say. And what's fascinating, 2 of you will hear this. Maybe on BitChute, thank God for that. Maybe 2 dozen of you hear this. If you endured this to this point. When I start speaking the truth, what happens, I get shadow banned, I get blocked, my videos taken down, eventually the channel taken down. And this has happened over and over again. So, and I know I'm not the greatest at what I do. And I know it should be more entertaining and more. I know most people just want to be entertained. I'm not interested in entertaining you. I'm here to speak the truth to you. so that you are not, especially, help you and help myself, that we not end up being entertained fools, tossed to and fro from every whim of man. And there are a lot of conjurations going on, folks. And a lot of it's happening in the church. Thou hast made all things. He says, the throne of thy majesty is among all the generations of the world. And thy name holy and glorious among all generations of the world. Thou art open before. Thou art blessed and praised. Thou hast made all things, and all power is with thee, and all things are open before thee and uncovered. Thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. See then what Azazel has done. Azazel has done, how he has taught all wickedness on earth, and to whom and revealed the secrets of the world which were prepared in the heavens. And Semjaza, to whom thou hast given the power to be chief of his associates, has made known conjurations, and they have gone together to the daughters of men, and have slept with them and with those women, and have defiled themselves, and have revealed to themselves these sins. So somebody's defiling somebody. So yeah, I just took a break and find myself again. Something about sin. Conjurations, witchcraft. It's funny, when I went out to the front porch, and the first time in a long time, of course it's the first time in a long time, it's been nice out, but a very young, voluptuous woman walked by my front, my place, and the first time I've ever seen her before, and of course she had a red lipstick on, and black hair, and she's wearing I don't know if it was a tank top or something like that, and very voluptuous breasts and no bra, and walking her wiener dog. I'm not making that up. That always happens to me, and it happens to you too, I'm sure. Yeah, where we go with this? And Sam, so we were talking about sins. The King of Kings, we know that's Jesus, right? At least in the New Testament. And we're talking about Samjaza, to whom thou hast given the power and the chief of his associates to make known conjurations, and they have gone together to the daughters of men, and have slept with them, and with those women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them these sins. And the women, which is interesting, and the women have brought forth giants, and thereby the whole world has been filled with blood and wickedness. We know this has something to do with eating of flesh and drinking of blood. And then also the wickedness is the conjurations and the sorceries that they taught these people, right? And then the use of metals. And now, behold, the souls which have died cry and lament at the gates of heaven, and their groans ascend, and they are not able to escape from the wickedness which is committed on earth. And thou knowest everything before it has come to pass, and thou knowest this and their circumstances, and yet thou dost not speak to us. What shall we therefore do in regards to this? Chapter 10, section 2 of Enoch. And then the Most High, the Great, the Holy One, spoke and sent Jael Aljor to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end which is to come, for the whole world will be destroyed, and the water of the deluge is about to come over the whole earth, and what is upon it will be destroyed. Now, a lot of people believe it's just a regional flood, but in this book it says the whole earth. The whole earth. The whole land. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may remain on the whole earth. And again the Lord spoke to Raphael, bind Azazel's hand, singular, and foot, singular, and put him in the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, like Dudael. Hey, dude, Dudael, and put him there, and lay upon him rough and pointed rocks, and cover him with darkness, that he may remain there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see the light. And on the great day of judgment he will be cast into fire. And heal the earth which the angels have defiled, and announce the healing of the earth, that I will heal it, and that not all of the sons of men shall be destroyed through the mystery of all the things which the watchers have spoken and have taught their sons. Well, obviously that has not changed. And the whole earth was defiled through the example of the deeds of Azazel. To him ascribe all the sins. And God said to Gabriel, Go against the bastards, and cast off, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication, and the children of the watchers from among men, and lead them out, and let them loose, that they may destroy each other by murder. For their day shall not be long, and they will all supplicate thee, but their fathers will secure nothing from them for them, although they expect an everlasting life, and that each one of them will live 500 years. And God said to Michael, Announce to Semjaza and to the others who are with him, who have bound themselves to women, to be destroyed with them in all their contaminations. And when all their sons shall have slain one another, they shall have seen the destruction of their beloved ones. Bind them under the hills of the earth for 70 generations. Now, if a generation is 40 years, according to the Bible and Hebrew lore, the possibility of 4,000, 4,008 years? Is that the right number? 70 times 40. I got my numbers wrong, didn't it? It's 2,800 years. 2,800 years. And that would be about the time Christ showed up. Till the day of their judgment and to their end, until the last judgment has been passed for all eternity. Now think about what I'm saying here. And in those days they will be led to the abyss of fire, or the lake of fire, and torture, and in the prison they will be locked for all eternity. And then he will burn and be destroyed, and they will be burned together from now on to the end of all generations. So these 200 angels, if we read the Bible correctly, as Jesus said, then these angels don't have anything to do with, specifically, I guess, are part of the conjurations of today, because they're in the judgment, the abyss of fire, the lake of fire, the abyss. And so whatever entities we're dealing with today, they're not the same 200. And destroy all souls of lust and of the children of the watchers, because they have oppressed mankind. Destroy all oppression from the face of the earth, and all wicked deeds shall cease. Well, that obviously is not the case today. And the plant of justice and righteousness shall appear, and deeds will become a blessing, and justice and righteousness will be planted in for joy forever. Wherever this place is not where we're at now. Then all the just will bend the knee, and they will remain alive till they beget 1,000 children. I don't understand what that is. And they will complete all the days of their youth and their Sabbath in peace. In those days the whole earth will be worked in justice, and will all the planted with trees, and will be full of blessings. Well, this place is not the way or maybe it should be that way, but we're hell bent to not make it that way. And the trees of desire will be planted on it, and the vines will be planted on it, and vineyard and vines, and the vine planted on it will bear fruit in abundance. And of all the seed sown on it, one measure will bear 10,000. One measure of olives will make 10 pressed oils. And cleanse thou the earth of all oppression and all injustice, all sin and all wickedness and uncleanness which are produced on the earth. Eradicate them from the earth. And all the children of men shall become just. Well, we aren't there yet. This place is not here. Unless that place we're talking about is New Jerusalem, which is a heavenly place, or a different place. A place that parallels this. A place where you may go after this life. According to the New Testament, that's the case. And all the children of men shall become just, and all the nations shall worship me as God. Well, that's not happening. And bless, and all will worship me, and the earth will be cleansed of all corruption, and all sin, and all punishment, no torment, and I will never again send a flood upon it, for generation, from generation to generation to eternity. So some giant contradictions are already arising. This is one of the reasons why it's not canonical. Canonical. Of course, canonical may some Freudian thing going on with Bigfoot, and I said a few other things that it's kind of stupid. Anyways, I don't know. We get into section 3. The previous of all these things, Enoch was hidden, and not one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he was, and what had become of him. And all his deeds were with the holy ones, and with the watchers in his day. And I, Enoch, was praising the great Lord and the King of the world. And behold, the watchers called to me. Enoch, the scribe, said to me, Enoch, thou art of justice. Go and announce to the watchers of heaven, who have left the high heaven and the holy and eternal place, and have contaminated themselves with women, and have done as the children of men do, and have taken to themselves wives, and are contaminated in great contaminations upon the earth. But upon earth they shall have no peace, nor forgiveness of sin, for they will not enjoy their children. They will see the murder of their beloved ones, and they will lament over the destruction of their children, and will petition to eternity. But mercy and peace will not be unto them. And Enoch, departing, said to Azazel, Thou wilt have no peace. A great condemnation has come upon thee. And he, i.e. Raphael, will bind thee, and alleviation and intercession and mercy will not be unto thee, because thou hast taught oppression, and because of the deeds of abuse and oppression and sin which thou hast shown to the children of men. And then going, I spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid. Fear and trembling seized them, and they asked me to write a memorial petition before the Lord, before God, into heaven. For they could not from now on speak with him, nor could they raise their eyes towards heaven, for shame and account of their sins, for which they were punished. And then I wrote this memorial petition, and prayed with reference to their souls, and for each of their deeds, for that which they had asked of me, that their by might obtain forgiveness and patience. And going, I sat down near the waters of Dan, which is to the right, i.e., south of the evening side, west of Hermon, and read their memorial petition till I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, and visions fell upon me, and I saw the vision of chastisement to show to the sons of heaven, and to upbraid them. And having become awake, I went to them, and they were all sitting assembled, lamenting at Ub Jael, which is between Lebanon and Senneser, with their faces covered. And I related before them all the visions that I had seen in my sleep, and commenced to speak those words of justice, and to upbraid the watchmen of heaven. This writing is the word of justice and the admonition of the watchers who are from eternity, as the Holy and Great One commanded in the vision. I saw my sleep, that I now will relate with a tongue of flesh, with my breath, which is the Great One has given to the mouth of men, that they might converse with it and understand it in their hearts. And as he had created and given to men the power to understand the word and of knowledge, thus also he has created me and given me the power to upbraid the watchers, the Son of Man. And I have written your petition, and in my vision it appeared to me thus. That your petition will not be granted in all the days of the world, and that judgment has been passed over you, and nothing will be granted unto you. And from now on ye will not ascend into heaven in all eternity upon earth. It has been decreed, and they shall bind you for all the days of the world. But before this ye will have seen the destruction of your beloved children, and ye will not be able to possess them, which is interesting, the word possess them, but they shall fall before you by the sword, and your petition for them will not be granted unto you, nor the one for yourselves. And while ye are weeping and praying, ye cannot speak a single word from the writing which I have written. And the vision appeared to me thus. Behold, clouds in the vision invited me, and a fog invited me. It sounds a lot like when Jesus' transfiguration, right? With the cloud, God. I'm not saying the same. And a course of the stars and the lightning drove and pressed me, and the winds and the vision gave me wings and drove me, and they lifted me up into heaven. I went till I approached near a wall which was built of crystals, and the tongue of fire surrounded it, and it began to cause me to fear. And I went into the tongue of fire, and approached near to a large house which was built of crystals, and the walls of this house were like a floor inlaid with crystals, and the groundwork of was crystals, and the ceiling was like the course of the stars, and of the lightning, and cherubim of fire were between them, and their heaven was water. And a flame of fire surrounded the walls, and inside the doors burned with fire. And I went into this house, and it was hot like fire and cold like ice, and there was nothing pleasant, no life in it. Fear covered me, and trembling seized me, and as I was shaking and trembling, I fell down on my feet and saw a vision. And behold, there was a second house larger than the other, and all whose doors stood open before me, and it was built with a tongue of fire, and in all things it excelled in grandeur and magnificence and size, so that I cannot describe to you the magnificence in it and its size. So it was a huge place. The floor was a fire, and above it was lightning in the course of stars, and its ceiling was also a flaming fire. And I looked and saw therein a high throne, and its appearance was like the hoar frost. I don't know what that is. What is hoarfrost? And its circuit like a shining sun, and voices of cherubim. Hoarfrost is named after its hair-like appearance. Size of the frost that forms depends on how much water vapor is available to feed the ice crystals as they grow. Hoar frost has a distinctive appearance, and it forms a hair-like and feathery structure as it grows. Hoarfrost. Like crystals, hoarfrost. And it circuits like a shining sun, and a voice of cherubim. And from under the great throne came streams of flaming fire, and it was impossible to look at it. And he who is great in majesty sat thereon, his garment thrown more brilliantly than the sun. His garment shone more brilliantly than the sun, and was whiter than any hail. None of the angels were able to enter, nor any flesh to look upon the form of the face of the majestic and honorable one. Fire of flaming fire was round him, and a great fire stood before him, and none of those who were around him could approach him. 10,000 times 10,000 were before him. We get this phrase from the Book of Revelation. So 10,000 times 10,000 were before him, but he required not any holy counsel. And the holy ones who were near him did not leave day or night, nor did they depart from him. And I had so long a veil upon my face, and I trembled, and the Lord called me with him his own voice, and said to me, Come hither, Enoch, and to my holy word. And he caused me to arise, and I went to the door, but I bent my face downward. He answered and spoke to me with his word, Hear and fear not, Enoch, thou just man, scribe of justice. Approach hither and hear my words, and go and say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee, that thou shouldest petition for them. Ye should petition for men. Ye should petition for men, and not men for you. And why have ye left the high and holy and everlasting heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourself with the daughters of men, and taken wives unto yourselves, and acted like the children of earth, and begotten giants as sons? Well, those chicks must have been hot to do that, man. They must have been super hot. That's all I gotta say. You had to do all that kind of stuff. You must have found the hottest chicks. Yeah. While ye were spiritual, holy, and having eternal life, ye defiled yourselves with women, and with the blood of flesh have begotten children, and have lusted after blood, the blood of men, and have produced flesh and blood, as they produce, who die and are destroyed. Therefore I have given them wives, that they might impregnate them. What? Therefore this is God saying, therefore I have given them wives, so God allowed this. He didn't allow making it happen. Therefore I have given them wives, that they might impregnate them, and children be born by them, as it is done on earth. Yea, we're formerly spiritual, living an eternal life. So the only way you can have eternal life is if you're spiritual. No, it can't be the flesh. Having eternal life without death to all the generations of the world. Wherefore I have not made for you any wives. For spiritual beings have their home in heaven. And now the giants, who have been begotten from body and flesh, will be called evil spirits on earth, and their dwelling place will be upon the earth. Evil spirits proceed from their bodies, because they are created from above, being their beginning and first basis being from the holy watchers, and they will be evil spirits upon the earth, and will be called evil spirits. Because the spirits of the earth have their dwelling place in heaven, and the spirits of earth who have been born of earth have their dwelling place on earth. The spirits of the giants who cast themselves upon the clouds will be destroyed and fall and, and will battle and cause destruction upon the earth. If 3,000 ells, if it's an inch, just imagine how big these suckers must be. What if it's a foot? Good luck. Now we're talking something that's really in the clouds. Or even half a foot. Even a third of a foot, you start being in the clouds. These were giants. These were giants. These were huge. Which tells me a couple other things. That this place is not even close to what they're telling us. Where are we at with all this before I got all distracted in my thoughts of nothingness? So there are evil spirits, and there are the evil spirits upon the earth. And the spirits of the giants who cast themselves upon the clouds will be destroyed and fall, and will battle and cause destruction on the earth, and do evil. They will take no kind of food, nor will they become thirsty. They will be invisible. These spirits will not rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them in the days of murder and destruction. Am I reading this right? Nor will they become thirsty. And the death of the giants, and when the spirits have proceeded from the bodies, their flesh shall decay without judgment. Thus they shall be destroyed till that day when the great judgment over all the great world shall be completed over the watchers and impious. Now to the watchers who have sent thee, that thou shouldest petition for them who were formerly in heaven, say, ye have been in heaven, and though the secrets were not yet revealed to you, still you knew illegitimate mysteries, and these ye have in hardness of your hearts related to women, and through these mysteries women and men increase wickedness over the earth. Tell them therefore ye have no peace. Chapter 16. That's probably a good place to stop. I know everyone has their own opinion about exactly what they're talking about here, and so be it. As for me, I don't know how spirits can interact with women outside of possessing them. And through possession, maybe they have some way of altering eggs of women. And then women have sex with the men that they actually want to have sex with, the physical men. And therefore, I don't know. But it's the simple way of looking at it to say, oh, yeah, they have sex the way we had sex. It's not necessarily true at all. Not even close to being necessarily true. You and I have never witnessed, at least I haven't, and maybe you have, an angel having sex with a witch. Have you? I haven't. I don't know if I ever do want to know that.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe you're mine.
If you don't know, you should take it.